In the quiet before dawn, the jungle exhaled. Rivers whispered over stone, leaves trembled under the unseen weight of the night, and the moon drifted across the sky like a slow, silver breath. From that stillness, a pulse emerged, subtle, patient, unbroken, and within it stirred a new life. Ixbalanque opened his eyes beneath the calm gaze of Awalix. His first breath was not a cry but a joining, the rhythm of the world folding itself into his own heartbeat. The air carried the scent of wet earth and ancient stone, the fragrance of life remembering itself. Each sound, each echo became part of the child's first understanding, that existence moves in circles, that shadow and light are one, that stillness can hold all things. The jungle bent gently toward him, as if recognizing the arrival of one who would carry its memory. Leaves hung motionless, water slowed in streams, and even the wind hushed to hear the rhythm of his pulse. The stars above shimmered faintly in response, and the moon's glow seemed to cradle him in silver light. He grew not by the measure of days but by awareness. Each night taught him patience, each dawn whispered of motion. He learned from the jaguar prowling at the edges of shadow, from the owl watching silently from a branch, from the rivers that carved valleys through stone without haste. His eyes drank the world slowly, absorbing patterns too subtle for ordinary thought, and his heartbeat aligned with the rhythms that sustained all living things. Ixbalanqué's first journey was not through paths or rivers, but through understanding. He walked barefoot upon damp soil and listened to the stories the forest told, of storms long past, of creatures long vanished, of the breath of gods and the silence of shadows. Each step was a lesson in stillness, a movement toward mastery of motion. Even before he moved beyond the clearing, the jungle had already begun to echo his rhythm. From above Awalix watched. Her silver light spread across the canopy, threading through vines and leaves, brushing over the river's surface, touching him without touch. She had taught the world calm once before, and now she watched her teachings reflected in this new child, a pulse born of shadow and light, destined to move through life in tandem with his brother, Hunahpu. When the day was young, a sound drifted through the jungle, faint, rhythmic, carrying the echo of laughter and challenge. It was the first hint of Hunahpu, appearing as if summoned by the forest itself. The two brothers were halves of one motion, one flame, one shadow. Where Hunahpu was fire, Ixbalanque was the stillness within flame. Where one rushed, the other measured. Together, they formed a rhythm the world would follow for centuries to come. The jungle became their teacher and their playground. Rivers curled around their feet. Leaves fell like soft applause as they ran. The sunlight was filtered through branches, scattering gold and green across their path. In silence, they learned the language of life, the weight of water, the patience of stone, the whisper of wind through hidden paths. And above all, they learned to move with the rhythm of the unseen, the pulse of all creation. Yet even in this early harmony, the shadows of Xibalba stirred. Deep beneath the roots of the world, the lords of the underworld felt the approach of new light. They whispered to one another in tones that trembled through stone and soil. The rhythm of Ixbalanque and Hunahpu reached them, subtle yet undeniable, and the currents of destiny began to twist in response. Ixbalanque paused at the edge of a river, gazing into its mirrored surface. The stars above were reflected in the water, intertwined with the glow of his own form. He saw both the world above and the hidden realm below, and he felt their pulse merge into one. Calm was not absence, he realized, but a living force, a rhythm he could carry with him into any shadow, into any trial that would await beyond the jungles of his birth. He stepped forward, the water rippling beneath his feet. Each ripple carried a lesson. Stillness can guide motion, reflection can shape destiny, and every journey begins with understanding one's own rhythm. The jungle exhaled again, and the rivers carried whispers of the trials to come. For Ixbalanque, the path was already unfolding, a journey that would descend into darkness and rise toward light, a cycle unbroken, eternal. Above, Awalix's light pulsed once more, steady and calm. It marked the beginning of his passage into myth, the slow unfolding of a story that would ripple across time and space, weaving through Xibalba, the forests, and the hearts of mortals who would one day remember. And so, the first chapter of the Son of the Night ended, not with action but with awakening, a quiet motion that would carry him through all the trials that destiny had prepared. The jungle stretched endlessly before him, a living cathedral of roots and leaves, of mist and the faint silver light that lingered from Awalix above. Each step Ixbalanque took pressed into soft earth, leaving no permanent mark, yet each movement resonated through the veins of the forest like a secret rhythm only the trees could hear. He wandered along riverbanks where water glimmered in half-light, tracing paths that curved and twisted as if aware of his presence. The streams did not merely flow, they spoke, whispering the memory of storms long past, of creatures that had once touched their surfaces, of the patient work of time shaping stone and soil alike. Ixbalanque listened with his whole being. He could feel the weight of every drop of water, the slow pulse of life moving through the riverbeds, and he learned to move with it rather than against it. The jungle was alive in ways no eye could see. Leaves bent gently before his approach, releasing the scent of rain even when the clouds had yet to open. Branches shivered faintly, sending vibrations along the trunks, and through it all he felt the subtle heartbeat of the world, slow, steady, infinite. From this rhythm he understood patience. From this quiet, he learned the first lesson of the hero who moves between worlds. Strength is not measured in speed or force, but in the capacity to harmonize with what already exists. As he walked, he glimpsed the faint outline of his brother, Hunahpu, far ahead, running along the ridges with energy and fire. The younger twin's presence was aflame, bright and impatient. Ixbalanque's own pulse slowed in contrast, his calm filling the spaces between Hunahpu's leaps. Together they formed a rhythm that neither could achieve alone. Fire tempered by shadow, motion guided by reflection. Even the wind seemed to follow their steps, shifting softly to carry their echoes farther into the forest. At the edge of a clearing, Ixbalanque paused to observe a great jaguar lying among the tall grass. Its eyes glimmered with curiosity rather than hunger. The creature did not flee, for it recognized in the boy a movement aligned with the pulse of the world. He knelt, touching the earth between them, and in that silent communion felt the essence of courage. Not the roaring or the strike, but the quiet steadiness that meets challenge without haste. The jaguar rose, moved, and disappeared into shadow, leaving only the memory of its grace in the boy's mind. The rivers grew wider, and with them the whispers of Xibalba became stronger, though still distant. The lords of the underworld stirred faintly, sensing the new light that Ixbalanque carried, a calm that could not be disrupted, a rhythm that would one day guide the flow of life and death alike. He did not know them yet, but the echoes brushed against him like the faint touch of wind on skin, a reminder that the journey beyond the jungle had already begun in subtle ways. He found himself at a pool reflecting both the stars above and the shadows below. The water was still as if holding its breath, waiting for him to step closer. Ixbalanque knelt and touched the surface. Ripples spread slowly, yet within them he glimpsed the infinite, the forests he had traversed, the moon hanging in silver patience, the unseen corridors of the underworld stirring. The pool whispered its first lesson, that reflection is as powerful as action, that understanding precedes movement. Night deepened around him. The cricket's song rose and fell in a soft cadence, perfectly aligned with the rhythm that coursed through his veins. The stars glimmered faintly, not as distant suns but as the eyes of watchers who had long forgotten their own light. Ixbalanque's glow reached him from above, brushing his shoulders, his hair, the small beads of dew on leaves. It was a reminder that even in descent, even in solitude, he was never truly alone. He rose and continued along the riverbank. The path narrowed and curved through dense foliage, each step a meditation. Shadows flickered as he passed, creating patterns that whispered stories of life and death, of courage and calm, of trials that had yet to come. He did not hurry. Time had no dominion here. Each heartbeat, each breath became part of the lesson itself. As the moon reached its zenith, Ixbalanque paused once more. The forest was still around him, the rivers murmuring, the wind holding its silence. He closed his eyes and felt the rhythm fully, the pulse that linked his own being to the heartbeat of the earth, the movement of rivers, the glow of stars, and the faint stirring of the underworld. He understood now that the journey was not measured by distance, but by awareness, that every path, every shadow, every reflection was part of the eternal current he was learning to navigate. And so the first night of his passage ended, quiet, patient, eternal. The jungle exhaled, the rivers rippled, and the pulse of Xibalba waited for him, knowing that one day he would enter, not as intruder but as a rhythm all its own. The jungle thickened as Ixbalanque and Hunahpu moved forward. Branches intertwined above, forming tunnels of shadow and silver, letting only fragments of moonlight slip through like secret paths. Every leaf quivered in greeting, every stone hummed beneath his feet, each echo a note in the endless song of the world. He learned to move without breaking the rhythm, to step lightly yet with certainty, feeling the pulse of life beneath his soles. Rivers split into streams that whispered along mossed banks. Ixbalanque knelt beside one, letting his fingers touch the surface. The water shimmered in response, revealing fleeting visions. A jaguar hunting in the night, a bird resting upon the branches, the distant glimmer of stars mirrored in Xibalba's depths. He understood then that the river was memory made liquid, a current carrying echoes of the past into the present. Every ripple was a lesson, every reflection a teacher. Hunahpu's laughter rose behind him, a sharp spark against the calm. The younger twin leaped across roots, stirred leaves, and ran along the banks as if chasing the very heartbeat of the jungle. Ixbalanque did not hurry to follow. He allowed the pace of his own rhythm to shape his steps, knowing that the fire of his brother would always need a shadow to balance it. Together they moved, not in tandem but in harmony, two halves forming a whole greater than either alone. The air grew thick with mist as they approached a grove of towering ceiba trees. Their roots dug deep into the earth, twisting into caverns that seemed to breathe beneath the soil. Here the jungle whispered differently. The wind carried faint echoes of distant voices, syllables forgotten, melodies older than stars. Ixbalanque paused and let the mist curl around him. Every inhalation drew in the memory of the world. Every exhalation released his own pulse into the air. Above, Ixbalanque's glow shifted with the curve of the moon. Her light no longer fell solely upon Ixbalanque, but wrapped around the twin brothers as a single thread, a silent cord connecting them to the rhythm of creation. She had descended once to teach stillness. Now she observed as her teaching rippled outward, shaping courage, reflection, and understanding. In the heart of the grove, a fallen log lay across a small creek, moss-covered and slick with the night's dew. Ixbalanque stepped carefully across it, feeling the weight of the world beneath his balance. The creek gurgled beneath him, carrying leaves and light, and in its flow he sensed the undercurrent of Xibalba itself, the first faint stirrings of the realm that would one day challenge him and his brother. It did not yet know him, but it waited, breathing slowly, watching through the veins of stone and water. The stars above flickered, not distant points but eyes that blinked with patience. The moon's silver light danced upon the leaves, creating patterns that shifted with every breath of wind. Ixbalanque followed those patterns with his gaze, letting them guide his steps. Every shadow was a teacher, every reflection in the pools, a map. The jungle was not merely a place to walk through, it was a living record of trials, of rhythm, of the dance between stillness and motion. Night deepened. The chorus of the forest, crickets, frogs, distant birds, wove around him in a slow cadence. Ixbalanque sat upon the damp earth beside the creek, closing his eyes to listen. He felt the pulse of the jungle, the hum of Xibalba far below, the watchful silver of Awalix above. For the first time he understood that his journey was not measured in distance, nor by steps taken, but by the rhythm he carried within himself. The wind shifted. It whispered of the trials to come, of challenges that would descend from shadow into light, of lessons he had not yet learned. Ixbalanque rose, steady and calm. Hunapu's flame of motion circled behind him, igniting the mist with sparks of laughter. Together they would face the depths. Together they would enter the heart of the underworld. But for now the jungle held its breath. The rivers murmured. The stars blinked faintly through the canopy. And Ixbalanque, son of night and of destiny, took his next step along the path that would carry him into legend. The night thickened as the brothers moved deeper into the jungle. The air smelled of wet earth and moss, carrying faint echoes of distant rivers and the subtle hum of unseen creatures. Shadows shifted gently across the trunks of trees, as if the forest itself were breathing in time with them. Ixbalanque walked carefully, feeling every vibration through the soles of his feet, aware that even the smallest motion could ripple through the pulse of life around him. A soft fog began to gather along the riverbanks, curling through roots and underbrush. Within it, shapes seemed to emerge and dissolve, glimpses of animals long gone, patterns of leaves that had fallen years before, faint whispers of voices the world had forgotten. Ixbalanque did not fear them. He stepped lightly, letting the mist wrap around him, feeling it as part of the rhythm of the forest. Every movement, every breath, every heartbeat became part of the lesson he carried inside. Hunapu darted ahead, chasing the fleeting shapes in the fog. His laughter echoed off the trunks, a bright contrast to the slow, measured calm that Ixbalanque carried. The balance between them was a dance, one twin moving like flame, the other like shadow, each shaping the other's path without words. The forest responded, bending gently to their steps, guiding them along hidden trails that opened only to those who moved with patience and awareness. They came to a river wider than any they had crossed before. Its surface was dark, smooth, reflecting the pale light of the moon and stars like a mirror of infinity. The current whispered faintly, carrying the memory of things long buried, the pulse of Xibalba far below, the echo of the first gods, the breath of the world before time began. Ixbalanque knelt beside it, touching the water. Ripples spread slowly, carrying with them visions of paths yet to come, challenges yet to be faced, lessons yet to be learned. The river spoke not in words but in rhythm, and he listened with his entire being. From above, Awalix's silver light brushed through the trees, filtering down to the river's edge. It was a soft presence, gentle yet unyielding, reminding him of the calm that must exist even amidst movement. The pulse of her light intertwined with the current of the river, and for a moment the forest, the water, and the boy were all one. He understood that courage was not in rushing forward, but in moving in harmony with forces larger than oneself. The first signs of the underworld's trials appeared in subtle ways. Shadows stretched longer than they should have, forming patterns that seemed to shift even as he looked away. Faint sounds echoed across the water, footsteps that were not his own, whispers that carried the weight of memory. Yet Ixbalanque did not flinch. He inhaled the mist, feeling it enter his lungs, and exhaled, letting his calm spread outward, softening the forest's response. The echoes and shadows receded, acknowledging his presence without harm. Hunahpu called to him from across the river, his voice a spark of motion in the still night. Ixbalanque nodded, stepping carefully across a fallen log to meet him. The twins stood together, silhouettes framed by moonlight and fog. The jungle seemed to bend closer, observing. Here, at the edge of the first trial, the world was waiting. It was not fear that would shape them, but awareness, not haste, but rhythm. Ixbalanque lifted his gaze to the moon, her light steady above the canopy. Within her glow, he felt the quiet promise of all the journeys yet to come. The descent into Xibalba, the passage through shadow, the transformation that awaited beyond every challenge. He understood that the path of a hero was not marked by victory or conquest, but by presence, by walking with the rhythm of the world and allowing its lessons to unfold within oneself. Together the brothers moved forward. The river's edge gave way to a clearing where the fog was thickest, and within it the first trials of destiny waited, not yet visible, but felt in the pulse of the earth beneath their feet, in the whisper of wind through unseen branches, in the stillness that carried both shadow and light. Ixbalanque stepped lightly, breathing in the night, aware that every moment was part of a larger current. Each heartbeat, each ripple of the river, each whisper of the forest became a guide. The journey had begun, and with it the slow unfolding of legend, of courage tempered by calm, of motion and stillness intertwined in eternal rhythm. And so the night deepened, the river rippled, the forest held its breath, and Ixbalanque, son of night and destiny, stepped forward into the first true mystery of the world. The clearing stretched before Ixbalanque and Hunahpu like a space suspended between breaths. Mist curled around their feet, coiling over roots and stones, tracing invisible paths that shifted even as the twins moved. Shadows folded into one another, forming shapes that hinted at creatures both real and imagined. The air carried a faint vibration, subtle and insistent, as though the forest itself were awake and listening to the rhythm of their steps. Ixbalanque walked slowly, sensing the pulse of the land beneath him. The soil held memory, every footprint left by hunters and wanderers, every ripple of water, every whisper of wind that had brushed through the canopy over centuries. The forest's pulse merged with his own heartbeat, a silent instruction that courage must always flow through patience. Hunahpu darted ahead, a spark of movement, scattering droplets of dew like liquid stars. His laughter echoed in the mist, rising and falling like wind over mountains. Ixbalanque smiled inwardly, allowing his calm to absorb the motion, letting it shape the stillness within him. Together, the twins became a single rhythm, fire and shadow, motion and reflection, each balancing the other in ways the forest recognized instinctively. From the thickening mist emerged the first hints of what lay beyond the jungle. Faint glimmers of light that did not come from the moon, subtle movements that seemed to ripple through the fog, and whispers carried on the wind, voices older than the earth, urging the twins forward. Ixbalanque understood without thought. These were signs, premonitions of trials, lessons meant to test their harmony. Fear was unnecessary. Presence and awareness would guide them. The river before them widened, dark and deep. Its surface was mirror-like, reflecting the silver of the moon and the muted green of the forest in a single unbroken expanse. Ixbalanque knelt beside it, letting his fingers graze the water. Ripples extended outward, carrying visions that shimmered faintly, distant corridors of Xibalba, streams of silver light winding through the underworld, and the faint glow of Awalix still watching, guiding, her presence woven into the currents. The water was alive with memory and possibility, a bridge between what had been and what must come. The twins paused. Ixbalanqué's reflection merged with that of Hunahpu, and for a moment they became one, a single pulse of light and shadow, of motion and stillness. The river acknowledged them, carrying whispers of the trials ahead, of lessons yet to be learned, of shadows that were not meant to harm but to awaken. A faint rustle in the trees drew Ixbalanqué's attention. Leaves trembled, branches swayed without wind. Shapes emerged in the periphery of vision, animals and forms he had never seen, but which moved in perfect rhythm with the pulse of the jungle. The mist carried their forms like smoke, and yet they were not threatening. They were mirrors, reflections of courage, patience, and intuition, waiting to be recognized. Ixbalanque breathed slowly, letting their movement guide his understanding, letting every breath carry him deeper into the rhythm of the world. The night deepened further. Crickets and frogs formed a soft cadence. Rivers murmured beneath the forest floor, and the stars above began to pale with the approach of dawn. Yet within the clearing time seemed suspended. The twins were neither beginning nor end. They were the motion that binds beginnings to ends, the eternal passage that flows between light and shadow. Ixbalanque rose, the mist parting softly around him. He felt the presence of Xibalba stir beneath his feet, far below the surface of the world, a subtle pull that promised challenge and transformation. He felt no fear, only anticipation, a deep knowledge that the trials would come, and that he would meet them with the calm that had been woven into him since birth. Hunahpu reached his side. The younger twin's energy sparkled in contrast to Ixbalanqué's quiet, yet the two movements were aligned, complementary, inseparable. Together, they stepped forward toward the deeper shadows of the jungle, where the first trials awaited, where Xibalba's influence began to leak into the world above, and where destiny had already begun to weave its intricate patterns. The clearing exhaled. The river rippled. The mist shifted. And Ixbalanque, son of night and destiny, took the next step into legend. The jungle thickened into a cathedral of shadow and silver, where every leaf, every vine, and every ripple of water seemed to hold a secret. Ixbalanque and Hunahpu moved slowly through it, not merely walking but listening, feeling, and absorbing the rhythm of life itself. The mist curled around them, weaving through roots and stones, and in its embrace, even the faintest vibrations were amplified. The pulse of unseen creatures, the whisper of water flowing beneath the soil, the resonance of Xibalba far below. Ixbalanqué's eyes traced the subtle movements in the mist. Shapes flickered at the edge of perception. A jaguar pausing in shadow, a bird gliding silently above the canopy, the faint shimmer of something neither fully living nor dead moving through the trees. He did not flinch, for he understood that these were not threats but mirrors, reflections of courage, patience, and understanding. Every movement around him was a teacher, every silence a guide. The river they followed widened and deepened, its waters dark and slow. The current carried more than rain and stone, it carried memory. Ixbalanque knelt beside it, letting his hands graze the surface. Within the black mirror he glimpsed echoes of the underworld, faint lights moving through shadowed corridors, the pulse of Xibalba's rivers stirring, the soft shimmer of trials yet to come. The river spoke without sound, its rhythm matching the slow, measured pulse he carried within. He understood that the current of destiny flows unseen, beneath the surface, shaping every motion of the living world. Hunahpu ran ahead, his laughter scattering droplets like sparks of flame. Ixbalanque allowed his calm to absorb that motion, letting the fire of his brother temper his own measured rhythm. Together they became one pattern, intertwined. Movement and reflection, shadow and light, action and pause. The jungle seemed to recognize the harmony, bending and swaying in response, guiding them forward. The first whispers of the trials began to rise in the mist. Shadows lengthened unnaturally, twisting into shapes that shifted even as Ixbalanque looked away. Faint sounds echoed across the river, steps that were not his own, whispers older than the canopy, hints of power that waited beyond sight. He did not rush, did not hesitate. He breathed slowly, feeling the rhythm of his pulse merge with that of the forest, and the shadows recoiled gently, acknowledging him without threat. In the center of a small clearing, the mist thickened. The moonlight fractured across the fog, scattering silver fragments on the ground. Ixbalanque knelt to observe them. Each shimmer reflected a possibility. Paths not yet walked, choices not yet made, lessons that awaited understanding. He inhaled the night deeply, letting it enter his lungs, and exhaled, sending his calm outward into the forest. The mist parted, the fragments settled, and the first faint signs of Xibalba's influence became visible, not as danger, but as an invitation. Above, Awalix's silver light touched the tops of the trees, filtering through the canopy and threading between the mist. Her presence was subtle, almost imperceptible, yet it guided every step, every breath, every heartbeat of Ixbalanque. She had once descended to calm Xibalba itself. Now her teaching flowed through him and through him into the forest, the river, and the air itself. He was her echo, and the world recognized it instinctively. The forest deepened, folding into itself like a labyrinth woven from shadow and silver light. Every step Ixbalanque took seemed to awaken hidden currents within the earth. Roots shifted imperceptibly, stones hummed faintly beneath his feet, and the air carried vibrations older than memory. The jungle was alive, aware, testing him not with danger but with observation. Each whisper of wind, each ripple in the river, each shiver of leaves a subtle measure of his awareness. Hunahpu darted ahead, tracing arcs of motion through shafts of moonlight. Ixbalanque allowed the younger twin's energy to move freely, folding its rhythm into his own. Where Hunahpu brought fire, he brought shadow. Where Hunahpu rushed, he paused. Together they became a single cadence, a harmony that the forest itself seemed to recognize. A fog rose from the river, curling over rocks and roots. Within it, shapes shifted. Forms of creatures not yet born, shadows of ancestors, fleeting impressions of gods long departed. They moved with subtle intelligence, testing perception rather than strength. Ixbalanque knelt, placing his palm on the wet earth. The vibration of the soil ran through his fingers, into his chest, into the rhythm that had carried him this far. He understood. These were not obstacles but mirrors. Courage, patience, and understanding would allow him to walk through their reflections without harm. The river widened, its waters dark and still. Its surface seemed to absorb moonlight, reflecting nothing but the depth below. Ixbalanque crouched and traced his fingers along the current. The water trembled slightly, revealing glimpses of Xibalba beneath. Faint silver currents twisting through shadowed corridors, hints of the lords who waited in silence, echoes of the trials to come. Yet the vision did not frighten him. Calm flowed through him, steady as the river itself, and he breathed the night into his chest, letting it merge with his own pulse. Hunapu's voice echoed faintly, a spark of motion cutting through the stillness. Ixbalanque rose slowly, sensing the balance between the twins. Fire and shadow, movement and reflection. Together they formed a rhythm larger than either alone. The forest bent to that rhythm, guiding them toward the first chambers of destiny without haste or interruption. Suddenly the mist thickened, forming shapes that hovered between perception and reality. Eyes, faint and silver, shimmered in the fog, neither threatening nor warm. They were the first signs of Xibalba's awareness, subtle and deliberate. Ixbalanque did not flinch. He inhaled slowly, feeling the pulse of the forest, the river, and the moon above, letting all of it merge into a single, measured rhythm. The eyes blinked, shifted, then disappeared, leaving behind the faint echo of respect. The trial had begun, though it had not yet touched him. Above, Awalix's light filtered through the canopy, a silver thread guiding without constraint. Her calm flowed into Ixbalanque, reinforcing his pulse, weaving his awareness into the larger rhythm of the world. He understood now. He was not conquering the underworld. He was becoming its counterpart, the quiet within its motion, the balance that would allow shadow and light to coexist. The night deepened further. Crickets, frogs, and distant calls of night birds combined into a measured cadence. The river murmured beneath roots and stones, and the wind carried subtle vibrations of ancient knowledge. Ixbalanque and Hunapu moved forward together, their steps in silent conversation, following patterns visible only to those who understood rhythm and stillness. At the edge of a grove, the mist parted to reveal the first chamber of stone. It was carved naturally, yet shaped by forces unseen, walls glowing faintly with minerals that shimmered in moonlight. Within the chamber, currents of air twisted and turned, carrying whispers of the underworld. The pulse of Xibalba was faint but insistent, brushing against Ixbalanque like a challenge. Calm will be tested here, presence must prevail over fear, reflection must guide every motion. Ixbalanque inhaled the night, exhaled into the rhythm of the forest, and stepped forward. Hunapu followed, their movements intertwined in perfect cadence. The first chamber awaited, carrying echoes of countless trials yet to come. And as the mist closed behind them, the jungle exhaled, the river rippled, and the rhythm of destiny began to unfold. The son of night, the child of destiny, had entered the threshold of legend. The chamber stretched endlessly before them, walls twisting like living stone, etched with patterns older than the first breath of wind. The air shimmered faintly, carrying vibrations that brushed against Ixbalanque's awareness. Every heartbeat, every breath, every pulse of life was mirrored in the subtle tremors of the stone. The jungle beyond seemed distant, yet its rhythm flowed into the chamber through roots and rivers, a continuous thread linking world and underworld, shadow and light. Hunapu's energy cut through the mist like a spark, scattering silver droplets that hung in the air like tiny stars. Ixbalanque allowed the motion to flow around him, weaving it into his calm. Where one moved with fire, the other held shadow. Together they became a single rhythm, a harmony that extended beyond themselves, touching the very stone of the chamber. The first true manifestation of Xibalba rose from the floor. Shapes of mist coalesced into forms neither fully alive nor entirely spirit, eyes flickering faintly like distant stars. They drifted toward the twins, curious, testing, observing. Ixbalanque did not flinch. He stepped forward, grounding himself in the pulse of his heartbeat and the rhythm of the moon above. The misty shapes circled, shifting in response to his presence, acknowledging his calm as a force that could balance their energy. A river of silver light wound along the floor, moving slowly, carrying echoes of the underworld. Ixbalanque knelt and let his hands touch it. Currents swirled around his fingers, revealing glimpses of chambers yet unseen, corridors winding into darkness, and currents of trials waiting to shape the twins. He felt their purpose not as threat, but as guidance. The underworld would not crush him, but teach him, and in learning he would bring balance to both realms. The mist parted as Hunapu approached his side, fire and shadow merging into a single pulse. The twins paused together, sensing the subtle rhythm of the chamber, the whisper of currents beneath their feet, the faint glimmer of awalix above threading through the air like silver silk. They had not yet entered the deepest trials, yet the world already responded to their harmony, bending shadows, stilling currents, shaping light. Above, the moon's glow brightened, spilling silver across the chamber. Ixbalanque inhaled, feeling the pulse of all things converge. River, forest, underworld, stars. He exhaled, and the currents shifted in response, flowing around him instead of resisting. The first trial had begun, but it was not yet visible. It lived in the rhythm, the pulse, the quiet force that governs movement and stillness alike. The twins continued, stepping carefully along the paths formed by the shifting light. Mist wrapped around their legs, carried the scent of earth and stone, and whispered faintly of trials yet to come. Illusions of fear, challenges of patience, lessons in observation and trust. Ixbalanque felt none of it as threat. He only absorbed the rhythm of the forest, the river, and the underworld, letting it guide his every step. The chamber widened, revealing arches carved naturally into stone, patterns that shimmered faintly as if breathing. Within each arch, faint shadows flickered, shapes of animals, figures of ancestors, glimmers of the first gods. They were guardians not of life or death, but of awareness itself. To pass, one must move with rhythm, with patience, with understanding. Ixbalanque walked slowly, allowing the pulse of the chamber to align with his own heartbeat. Hunapu followed, sparks of motion dancing around shadow. The river of silver light guided them forward. It wound around roots and stones, around arches and shadows, carrying with it the echoes of lessons yet to be learned. Ixbalanque followed its current, stepping in harmony, exhaling into the rhythm of the world. The mist shifted, the shadows paused, and the first tangible signs of Xibalba's trials shimmered faintly in the corners of perception. And so the night deepened, the forest outside held its breath, and the river rippled quietly beneath the chambers of the underworld. Ixbalanque, son of night and destiny, stepped ever deeper into legend, guided by the pulse of calm that would carry him through every trial yet to come. The chamber deepened into darkness and light, a space where shadow moved with intention, curling around pillars of stone and mist. Ixbalanque and Hunahpu stepped carefully, each motion measured, each breath aligned with the rhythm of the river beneath the chamber floor. The mist thickened around them, carrying whispers that shifted in tone, sometimes soft as wind, sometimes sharp as stone scraping against stone. These were the first tangible currents of trial, the underworld testing their presence without threatening their bodies. Ixbalanque knelt beside the river again, placing his hands on the surface. The currents swirled, coalescing into patterns that resembled both creatures and spirits. They moved as if alive, stretching toward him, yet recoiling when he met their motion with calm. He understood instinctively. The trials were not obstacles but teachers, each designed to show him the rhythm within himself, the harmony necessary to navigate shadow without fear. Hunahpu leapt lightly across a ridge of stone, scattering faint motes of silver light in his wake. Ixbalanque followed, each step deliberate, letting the younger twin's flame ripple through his shadow, balancing the two forces. Together they moved as one, a single pulse that resonated through the chamber. The walls seemed to bend slightly, acknowledging the balance. Even the currents of Xibalba seemed to settle in recognition, flowing more smoothly, carrying with them faint echoes of distant stars. Then the first true test appeared. Shapes coalesced from the mist, humanoid yet fluid, their outlines shimmering and indistinct. They circled the twins, moving in patterns both unpredictable and precise. The air vibrated faintly as the shapes whispered without sound, testing patience and focus. Ixbalanque did not flinch. He breathed with the rhythm of the chamber, exhaling into the pulse of the underworld. The forms paused, then mirrored his motions, echoing calm rather than fear. Hunahpu moved with more energy, darting around the shapes, engaging their patterns with motion, while Ixbalanque provided steady reflection. Where one tested the external currents, the other maintained internal harmony. The shapes circled, twisted, and reformed in response, their motions complex yet patterned, a dance of shadow and intention. The twins were not enemies here, but participants in the rhythm of the underworld itself. The river widened further, carrying fragments of light that shimmered like distant stars. Ixbalanque knelt once more, tracing the currents with his fingers. Each ripple revealed possibilities, moments of choice, echoes of trials yet to come. He inhaled the night deeply, sensing the pulse of Xibalba beneath the stones and rivers. The underworld was alive with intention, its currents alive with memory, yet it moved with him rather than against him. The chamber's walls began to shimmer faintly, revealing shapes of animals long vanished and spirits that had learned to rest. Their forms danced across the mist, weaving through the rivers and roots, leaving trails of silver light. The twins walked among them, stepping in harmony, their motion shaping the rhythm rather than breaking it. This was the first true lesson of Xibalba. Trials are not conquered by force, but by attuning oneself to the pulse of the world. Night deepened further, yet within the chamber time seemed suspended. The currents of river, mist, and shadow flowed in unison with the twins' pulse. Ixbalanque inhaled, exhaled, and stepped forward. The shapes parted, forming a narrow path toward the heart of the chamber, where the underworld's first mysteries awaited. Hunahpu followed, their energies interlaced, moving as a single entity in rhythm and reflection. The first trial had been met, not with triumph or haste but with presence. Calm had prevailed over fear, awareness had harmonized with motion. The jungle, the rivers, the river of Xibalba beneath, and the silver light above all exhaled together in acknowledgement. The path deeper into destiny lay ahead. Ixbalanque, son of night and destiny, rose to his full height. His shadow and the flame of his brother stretched across the chamber, intertwining in a pulse that extended outward, brushing the edges of the mist, the river, and the ancient stones. Ahead, deeper currents of the underworld stirred, ready to teach, to guide, to transform. And so, the threshold of legend awaited them, where motion met stillness, shadow met light, and the eternal rhythm of life and underworld would unfold with each step. The corridors stretched endlessly before them, carved from shadow and stone, twisting like the roots of the oldest trees. Every surface hummed with energy, faint vibrations that pulsed with the rhythm of Xibalba itself. The air was thick, carrying scents of wet stone and ancient memory. Ixbalanque walked deliberately, feeling each pulse through the soles of his feet, his heartbeat synchronized with the silent cadence of the chamber. Hunahpu moved ahead in sparks of motion, yet even his energy seemed tempered by the calm that flowed from his brother. The first of the underworld's guardians appeared subtly, not as threat but as presence. Shadows coalesced into forms of jaguar and serpent, of birds that had never flown and creatures that existed only in memory. Their eyes glimmered faintly, observing, measuring, awaiting the proof of harmony rather than strength. Ixbalanque knelt briefly, letting the pulse of his rhythm extend outward, touching the edges of the forms, merging his calm with their intent. The shadows circled and shifted, then parted, acknowledging his presence without aggression. The river beneath the corridors whispered faintly, carrying fragments of light along its twisted channels. Ixbalanque extended his hand and let the water flow through his fingers. It revealed glimpses of paths yet to come, chambers filled with stone spirals, arches that twisted into impossibility, currents that would test not muscle but mind and heart. He inhaled the damp air, exhaled into the rhythm of the underworld, and felt the pulse align with his own. Every trial ahead would not break him. It would teach him to move in concert with forces greater than himself. Hunahpu's laughter echoed faintly, a bright spark in the dense shadow. Ixbalanque allowed it to flow through him, weaving fire into shadow, motion into stillness. The forest above, the river beneath, the silver light of Awalix threading from the heavens, all joined into a single cadence. Here at the threshold of trials, rhythm was strength and harmony was power. The corridors opened into a wide chamber. Pillars of stone rose from floor to ceiling, etched with spirals that seemed to shift as the twins walked. Shadows danced along the carvings, flickering like candlelight, revealing fleeting shapes of ancestors and spirits. Ixbalanque stepped carefully, feeling the pulse of each stone, each pattern, each echo. The chamber was alive yet not hostile. It waited for recognition, for understanding. It was a living reflection of the balance he carried within. From the far end of the chamber, a faint light shimmered, pale and unyielding. It twisted through the mist like a current of silver flame, and Ixbalanque felt the pull of its rhythm. It was the first tangible call of Xibalba's deeper trials, a current that could either guide or confound. He did not hesitate. He allowed his heartbeat, his breath, his pulse of calm to align with the unseen motion. The light pulsed in response, opening a path forward. Hunahpu followed, his motion sparking like fire along the currents of mist. Together, the twins walked into the deeper corridors, their rhythm intertwined, their awareness harmonized. Every step carried them further from the world above and closer to the heart of legend, where trials would teach, shape, and transform them. The river whispered below, the mist swirled above, and the shadows curved gently around them. Xibalba was not a place of conquest. It was a mirror of rhythm, a reflection of courage measured in calm and understanding. Ixbalanque inhaled deeply, exhaled into the cadence of the chamber, and stepped forward, fully aligned with the eternal pulse that had carried him from birth through the jungle, into the clearing, along the river, and finally into the heart of the underworld. And thus, the first corridors of trial welcomed the son of night and destiny, and the legend of Ixbalanque began to flow through the rhythm of shadow and light, motion and stillness, fire and calm, in the eternal dance of Xibalba. The corridors of Xibalba stretched endlessly, a labyrinth of shadow and faint silver light. Every stone hummed with memory, every arch whispered lessons older than the first breath of the world. Ixbalanque and Hunahpu moved carefully, not in haste, but in harmony with the pulse of the underworld. The river beneath twisted silently, carrying currents of memory and fragments of light that shimmered like stars submerged in liquid shadow. The mist around them thickened, curling through roots and along walls, carrying hints of shapes not yet formed. Some resembled animals, others figures of ancestors, all moving in a rhythm that was neither threatening nor chaotic. Ixbalanque breathed slowly, inhaling the weight of the corridors, exhaling calm into the pulse of the chamber. The mist responded, parting slightly, allowing the twins to move forward without disruption. Hunahpu leapt lightly across a ridge of stone, sparks of motion scattering along the mist. Ixbalanque allowed the younger twin's energy to flow around him, folding the fire into his shadow, motion into stillness. Together they became a single pulse, a rhythm that extended beyond themselves, reaching into the walls, the river, and the shadows themselves. The first echoes began to emerge. Sounds unformed at first, soft murmurs, the faint rustle of invisible wings, whispers of currents moving in the river below. They carried no words, only intention, vibrations older than memory, testing the twins' awareness. Ixbalanque closed his eyes for a moment, aligning his heartbeat with the rhythm, letting calm flow through him. The echoes recognized him, shifting gently, revealing faint pathways ahead. The corridors opened into a wide chamber, the ceiling high and carved with spirals that shifted subtly in the faint silver glow. Shadows flickered across the walls, forming shapes that hinted at lessons, reflections of courage and presence. Ixbalanque stepped forward, feeling the pulse of the chamber align with his own. The river whispered beneath his feet, carrying faint memories of creatures long gone, of trials yet to unfold, and of the slow, inevitable movement of destiny itself. Hunahpu's energy sparked in response, bright arcs of motion dancing along the mist. Ixbalanque did not attempt to control it. He absorbed it, weaving it into the pulse of his calm. Together they moved as one, fire and shadow, motion and reflection, shaping the corridors rather than being shaped by them. The echoes shifted with them, creating a path deeper into the underworld. Above, Awalix's silver light filtered faintly through the highest arches, touching the twins with gentle guidance. Her presence was quiet yet unmistakable, a reminder that the calm of night could navigate even the deepest currents of shadow. Ixbalanque inhaled, exhaled, and allowed his pulse to merge with hers, reinforcing the rhythm that had carried him from the jungle, across the river, and into the chambers of trial. The first true test of the path of echoes appeared subtly. Shadows began to move in patterns, coiling and twisting like currents in water, reflecting the twins' motion back at them. Ixbalanque stepped lightly, exhaling into the rhythm, and the echoes responded, flowing with him instead of against him. Hunahpu followed, sparks of fire weaving around shadow, their motions interlacing into a dance of harmony. Time seemed suspended. Every step, every breath, every heartbeat was magnified in the stillness. The river carried whispers of memory beneath the floor. The mist carried fragments of light above. And the walls themselves seemed to pulse gently, alive with the echoes of Xibalba's intention, that trials were not obstacles to conquer, but rhythms to harmonize with. Ixbalanque paused at the center of the chamber. He closed his eyes and listened. The echoes surrounded him, faint, gentle, insistent, flowing through stone, mist, and river alike. Each vibration carried a lesson. Presence must prevail over haste, reflection must balance motion, and the rhythm of all things flows into one pulse when met with awareness. Hunahpu's laughter sparkled, a bright contrast to the calm that Ixbalanque carried. Yet even that energy folded into the rhythm of the chamber, shaping the echoes rather than disturbing them. The twins moved onward, deeper into the path of echoes, guided by the river, the mist, the pulse of the walls, and the quiet watch of Awalix above. The underworld responded in kind, bending its shadows, shaping its currents, and allowing the first true flow of legend to move forward. Every ripple in the river, every shimmer in the mist, every subtle echo of stone was a reminder. The path of echoes is not walked with haste or fear, but with rhythm, reflection, and awareness. And so the twins stepped further into Xibalba, deeper into the currents of trial, and further along the eternal rhythm that would define their destiny. The corridors narrowed, twisting like living roots beneath the forest, carrying a subtle pulse that reached into the very bones of the twins. Every step Ixbalanque took was measured, deliberate, aligned with the quiet rhythm that had carried him from the jungle into the depths of Xibalba. Shadows stretched along the walls, curling into patterns that were almost familiar, almost comforting, but never entirely still. The echoes here were stronger, moving with intention, whispering lessons older than the first breath of the world. Hunahpu darted ahead, sparks of motion scattering through the mist, tracing arcs that glimmered faintly as if painted by starlight. Ixbalanque allowed his calm to absorb the energy, folding fire into shadow, motion into stillness. Together, the twins became a single rhythm, a pulse that resonated through the corridors, the river beneath their feet, and the mist that swirled around them. The first illusions appeared subtly. Shapes in the mist seemed to mirror the twins' own movements, but slightly distorted. A hand too long, a shadow that lingered too late, a ripple that flowed backward instead of forward. Ixbalanque paused, inhaled slowly, and let the rhythm of his heartbeat guide his perception. The illusions responded to his calm, shifting into patterns that no longer threatened but taught. Hunahpu moved with him, learning to temper his own fire with reflection, understanding that every illusion was a lesson in rhythm, not in fear. The river beneath twisted and split, carrying light that shimmered like trapped stars. Ixbalanque knelt beside it, letting the currents flow through his fingers. Within them he glimpsed echoes of corridors yet unseen, trials that would test patience, perception, and harmony. The river whispered without words and he listened, letting its voice shape his steps. Every ripple, every shimmer, every faint vibration in the mist became part of his understanding. Motion and stillness, shadow and reflection, are one when approached with awareness. The corridor opened into a chamber where the echoes were strongest. Faint shapes moved across the walls, flickering like memories half-formed. Ixbalanque stepped lightly, exhaling into the rhythm of the chamber, and felt the echoes bend around him, aligning with his pulse. Hunahpu followed, his motion sparking through shadow, the twins' movements weaving a harmony that even the echoes recognized. Time became elastic in the chamber. Moments stretched and folded, shadows flickering ahead of themselves, the river carrying light that was both past and future. Ixbalanque inhaled, exhaled, and let his rhythm flow into the space, absorbing the distortions and letting them settle into calm. The first true trial of awareness had begun, to walk through illusion without fear, to harmonize with motion and reflection alike. Above, Awalix's silver light filtered faintly through unseen openings, brushing the twins with quiet guidance. Her presence was a gentle pulse, threading through the river, the mist, and the stone. Ixbalanque aligned with her light, letting it reinforce his calm, allowing the illusions and echoes to flow through him without disruption. Hunahpu's fire danced alongside, balanced by shadow, movement tempered by stillness. The chamber led to a narrower corridor, where the echoes moved faster, weaving patterns in the mist that tested anticipation and focus. Ixbalanque stepped carefully, sensing each vibration, each pulse of air, each ripple in the river. Hunahpu followed, their motions intertwined, each teaching the other the rhythm of harmony, of reflection, of presence. The illusions no longer frightened, they guided. The echoes no longer confused, they clarified. As the twins moved, the corridor opened to a chamber where light and shadow intertwined, reflecting not the world above, but the currents of memory beneath. Ixbalanque knelt, placing his hands on the cold stone floor. Faint silver threads pulsed through the chamber, carrying fragments of lessons yet to be learned. He absorbed them, exhaling into the rhythm, and the space shifted, revealing a path forward. The river murmured beneath the chamber floor, carrying fragments of light along winding channels. Mist swirled around the twins, and shadows stretched into forms that hinted at the trials ahead. Ixbalanque rose, feeling the pulse of all things converge. The corridor, the river, the echoes, the light of Awalix above. Hunahpu's flame followed, sparks dancing through shadow. Together they moved forward, stepping into the deeper path of echoes, where the underworld's trials would begin to shape them fully, teaching rhythm, harmony, and the quiet power of presence. The corridor widened, opening into a chamber vast enough to hold the quiet weight of countless memories. Mist curled across the floor in slow, deliberate spirals, reflecting faint silver light that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. Ixbalanque stepped carefully, letting his pulse guide the rhythm of his motion. Hunahpu moved alongside him, his fire-like energy weaving around the shadows, sparks glimmering along the undulating fog. Together they moved in harmony, motion and reflection intertwining, shaping the currents of the chamber as much as the chamber shaped them. The echoes of Xibalba grew stronger here, coalescing into patterns that flickered along the walls and floor. Shapes emerged from the mist, animals that had not yet been born, ancestors frozen in half-formed memories, fleeting visions of the world above reflected in dark pools. They did not advance, did not threaten. They waited, measuring presence and awareness, testing the twins' ability to move in rhythm rather than react in haste. Ixbalanque knelt beside one of the pools, placing his hands on the surface. Ripples extended outward, revealing fragments of corridors yet to come, trails of lessons yet to be learned, currents that would challenge patience and perception alike. The water vibrated faintly under his touch, whispering of harmony and balance, reminding him that even within trial there is rhythm. Hunahpu mirrored his focus, stepping lightly beside the pool, their pulses entwined, fire and shadow, motion and reflection, learning to move as one. The chamber itself seemed alive. Pillars carved from stone twisted into spirals that shifted subtly as the twins moved. Light reflected off mineral veins embedded in the walls, scattering into streams that intertwined with shadows, forming a dance that responded to every step, every breath, every heartbeat. Ixbalanque exhaled slowly, letting his calm flow outward. The shapes of illusions shifted in response, no longer confusing, no longer testing force, but revealing the nature of balance itself. Mist swirled higher, carrying faint echoes of past trials, voices without words, patterns without beginning or end. Ixbalanque inhaled deeply, sensing the subtle rhythm in the air, the stone, the river beneath their feet, the fire of Hunahpu alongside him, and the watchful silver of Awalix above. Each element flowed into one another, forming a single pulse that guided their steps, and the chamber responded, opening pathways that had previously been hidden. The twins continued forward, moving slowly yet deliberately, each step a meditation, each breath a bridge between presence and action. Faint shapes drifted along the walls, illusions that shifted and reformed as they moved, testing perception, patience, and harmony. Ixbalanque allowed them to flow around him, observing rather than reacting, absorbing lessons from rhythm, reflection, and stillness. Hunahpu's energy complemented his calm, their movement creating a balance that echoed across the chamber and into the currents of Xibalba below. The river beneath them carried silver fragments of memory. Ixbalanque knelt briefly to trace the currents with his fingers. Each ripple revealed the pulse of the underworld, the path ahead, the challenges yet to come, the unseen watchers moving in harmony with the echoes of the chamber. He rose slowly, exhaling into the rhythm, stepping forward with awareness. Hunahpu followed, sparks of motion dancing across shadow, interweaving with the calm of his brother. Time stretched and folded in the chamber. Shadows flickered ahead of themselves, light reflected backward, illusions shimmered along the walls. Ixbalanque inhaled, exhaled, and allowed his pulse to merge with the chamber itself. The illusions no longer resisted. They flowed, revealing the lessons within their movement. The echoes guided rather than tested, the river whispered rather than roared, and the mist curled around them like a cloak of gentle instruction. And so, the twins continued deeper into the path of echoes, each step harmonized with the pulse of the underworld, each breath merging with the rhythm of stone, water, and light. Xibalba watched, not in judgment, but in anticipation, as the sons of night and destiny moved ever closer to the heart of trials, ready to learn, to grow, and to transform. The corridor narrowed once more, funneling Ixbalanque and Hunahpu into a chamber where shadows and silver light intertwined in complex patterns. Mist curled thickly across the floor, rising in spirals that seemed to follow the twins' steps. Every ripple of air carried vibrations from the river beneath, faint echoes of currents that pulsed with memory and intention. Here the underworld revealed the first full illusion-based trial. It did not speak, did not act with force, but moved with purpose, testing the twins' awareness, perception, and harmony. Shapes emerged in the mist, indistinct yet undeniably alive. Some resembled animals of the jungle, but twisted, jaguars with elongated limbs, serpents that coiled impossibly through air, birds that glimmered like fragments of stars. Others hinted at ancestors, their forms shifting, flickering, their presence more felt than seen. The illusions mirrored the twins' own movements, reflecting motion and shadow in subtle distortion. Ixbalanque inhaled slowly, letting the rhythm of his pulse guide him. The illusions bent in response, flowing rather than obstructing, testing not force but calm and alignment. Hunahpu darted forward, his energy bright and quick, scattering sparks that illuminated paths hidden in the mist. Ixbalanque followed, absorbing his brother's fire into his shadow, weaving motion into stillness. Together, their movements created a rhythm larger than themselves, a pulse that extended into the chamber, the mist, and the river beneath. The illusions responded, flowing in tandem, revealing pathways and patterns rather than barriers. The first illusion approached more directly, a jaguar-shaped shadow with eyes like faint silver flame. It moved with deliberate grace, circling the twins, testing reaction and patience. Ixbalanque paused, exhaled, and allowed the rhythm of the chamber to guide him. His heartbeat merged with the pulse of the stone, the mist, and the river below. The jaguar circled, slowed, and then shifted, dissolving into a spiral of mist and light. Hunahpu mirrored the movement, folding his fire into shadow, letting the pattern complete naturally rather than forcing it. The chamber responded in kind. Pillars of stone pulsed softly, reflecting the twins' rhythm back through the mist. Silver threads of light traced patterns along the walls, coiling and uncurling like currents of air and water intertwined. Every step, every breath, every subtle motion became part of the trial. Ixbalanque realized that the challenge was not to overcome the illusions but to move within them, to harmonize with their rhythm, to reflect rather than resist. The river beneath murmured more distinctly now, carrying the memory of every movement, every choice, every echo of the chamber. Ixbalanque knelt beside a small pool at the center, tracing currents with his fingertips. Each ripple revealed possibilities, paths not yet walked, reflections not yet understood, echoes that would test perception and harmony. He exhaled into the flow, allowing his calm to infuse the currents. Hunahpu followed, sparks of energy intertwining with shadow, reinforcing the rhythm. Time stretched and curved. Illusions shifted faster, coiling and twisting through mist and light, testing coordination, awareness, and trust between the twins. Ixbalanque stepped carefully, letting each movement be measured, each breath precise. The illusions responded to rhythm rather than force, aligning, transforming, revealing subtle patterns that could only be seen by the calm and attentive. Hunahpu's fire wove alongside shadow, a perfect counterpoint, creating a balance that made the chamber itself pulse in recognition. At last the illusions receded, leaving only faint traces of silver mist. The chamber exhaled and the path forward became visible, carved from light, shadow, and water. Ixbalanque rose, feeling the rhythm of the underworld merge with his own pulse. Hunahpu joined him, sparks of fire fading into the calm of their shared motion. The first full illusion-based trial had been met not with aggression, but with harmony. Beyond the chamber, the corridors narrowed again, twisting into patterns more complex and subtle. Faint echoes whispered through stone and mist, carrying lessons yet to unfold. The twins moved forward together, their rhythm intertwined, guided by the pulse of Xibalba, the silver light of Awalix above and the river beneath. Every step, every breath, every heartbeat was now both trial and mastery, echoing into the chambers yet unseen, deeper along the path of echoes. And so the underworld continued to teach, the river murmured, the mist swirled, and Ixbalanque and Hunahpu advanced further into legend, moving ever deeper into the eternal rhythm of shadow, light, motion, and reflection. The corridor twisted further, narrowing into a tunnel where mist and shadow interwove so tightly that the air seemed to vibrate with its own pulse. Ixbalanque stepped lightly, feeling every vibration along the stone beneath his feet, every whisper of the river flowing far below. The twin currents of motion and stillness pulsed through him, guiding him forward. Hunahpu moved alongside, his energy sparking faint arcs that illuminated the faint silver patterns etched into the walls, revealing hidden textures and rhythms of the chamber. Shadows gathered, coalescing into forms more complex than before. They twisted and folded, mimicking the twins' motions, yet distorted in ways that demanded awareness rather than force. Ixbalanque inhaled deeply, sensing the subtle rhythm of each movement, the cadence of mist and stone, and the pulse of the river beneath. He exhaled into the echoes, aligning himself with the currents, allowing the illusions to flow around him rather than collide. The first of the chamber's intricate challenges presented itself, a series of mirrored echoes. Each shadowed figure reflected the twins' movements, but slightly delayed, slightly altered, a rhythm not entirely their own. Ixbalanque observed, learning that to move in harmony, one must anticipate, reflect, and merge with the rhythm without dominance. Hunahpu followed, fire weaving into shadow, their combined energy creating a pulse that harmonized with the distorted echoes. The chamber responded subtly. Pillars of stone shimmered, carving patterns into the mist. The silver threads of light traced spirals along the walls, coiling around shadows, guiding the twins through the maze of illusion. Ixbalanque stepped deliberately, feeling each ripple of energy as it passed through the chamber, each echo a lesson in balance and timing. The twins moved as one, a dance of fire and shadow, motion and stillness, harmonizing with the currents rather than opposing them. Rivers of faint light coalesced across the floor, tracing paths through the mist that pulsed with the chamber's rhythm. Ixbalanque followed these currents with his gaze, letting them guide his feet and his mind. Each ripple revealed choices, each shimmer offered understanding. He exhaled, sending his calm into the chamber, allowing the illusions to shift and reform in response. Hunahpu mirrored the movements, sparks intertwining with shadow, reinforcing the pattern. Time became fluid. Shadows twisted and stretched, light reflected in infinite permutations. Illusions moved faster than thought, testing patience, focus, and unity. Ixbalanque allowed himself to merge with the rhythm, exhaling into the chamber, absorbing its pulse, letting each step become both lesson and reflection. Hunahpu's motion complemented the calm, balancing the energy, completing the pattern. At last the chamber exhaled. The illusions dispersed into faint wisps of silver mist, leaving behind only subtle ripples across the stone floor. The twin currents of the underworld, now aligned with the rhythm of the brothers, revealed the path forward. Ixbalanque rose slowly, feeling the pulse of Xibalba beneath him, the guidance of Awalix above, and the calm mastery that had been growing within him since birth. The twins moved forward, stepping into the next corridor, deeper along the path of echoes. Mist and shadows continued to swirl, rivers whispered, and faint echoes traced the walls, all carrying the lessons of rhythm, presence, and harmony. The underworld watched and waited, preparing for the challenges yet to come, as Ixbalanque and Hunahpu advanced further into the eternal rhythm of legend. The corridor narrowed again, spiraling downward, carrying with it a pulse that seemed older than the forest above, older even than the first rivers. Mist hung thickly, curling in coils that reflected the twins' movements before they even happened, shaping their steps in echoes and reflections. Every stone hummed beneath Ixbalanqué's feet, every ripple of the river beneath carried faint light like threads of memory. The underworld breathed with purpose, preparing the first true multi-layered trial, a test not of force but of awareness, harmony, and rhythm. Shadows shifted, folding in on themselves. Shapes appeared and disappeared. Jaguars elongated unnaturally, serpents coiled through air in impossible loops, birds flickered as if made from fragments of stars. Each illusion reflected not only motion, but intention, merging echoes with distorted reflections. Ixbalanque inhaled, letting the rhythm of his pulse align with the corridors, the mist, the river, and the silver light that threaded faintly from above. Hunahpu darted forward, sparks of motion slicing through the illusions. Ixbalanque folded the younger twin's energy into his own shadow, weaving fire into stillness, motion into reflection. Together they became a single pulse, a pattern that extended through stone, mist, and the river below. The illusions twisted, mirrored, and tested them, but they flowed with the rhythm rather than fighting it. The chamber expanded into a wide hall, pillars etched with spirals that seemed to move subtly as the twins advanced. Echoes filled the space, layering over one another. Distant laughter, faint whispers, the sound of footsteps that were not their own. Ixbalanque closed his eyes for a moment, breathing deeply, exhaling into the rhythm, allowing the echoes to merge with his awareness rather than overwhelm it. Hunahpu mirrored his movement, sparks of fire weaving into the flowing shadows, creating a balance that even the illusions acknowledged. From the far side of the hall, a faint silver light coalesced into a stream, moving like liquid stars along the floor. Within it, distorted reflections of the twins' own movements appeared, multiplied and stretched. Ixbalanque stepped lightly, following the stream's current, exhaling into the rhythm, letting his calm guide each motion. Hunahpu followed, sparks and shadow entwining, their pulse becoming a living pattern that harmonized with the multi-layered illusions. Time became fluid. Moments stretched, shadows flickered ahead of themselves, reflections merged with echoes. Each step was a meditation, each breath a bridge between perception and mastery. Ixbalanque allowed himself to move within the layers, observing without reacting hastily, aligning motion with stillness, shadow with fire, presence with rhythm. Hunahpu's energy flowed alongside, completing the pattern of balance, fire dancing within shadow. The river beneath murmured louder, carrying the echoes of the chamber through stone, mist, and light. Ixbalanque knelt briefly to trace the currents with his fingers, feeling the pulse of Xibalba's intention. Every ripple revealed lessons yet to be absorbed, every shimmer guided awareness toward harmony. He exhaled fully, letting calm flow outward, shaping the illusions, echoes, and reflections into a coherent rhythm. At last the chamber exhaled. Shadows dispersed, mist settled, and the light revealed a narrow path forward. Ixbalanque rose, sensing the pulse of the underworld aligned with his own heartbeat. Hunahpu's fire folded into shadow, their rhythm now inseparable. The first multi-layered trial had been met, not with force, but with harmony, awareness, and presence. The twins moved forward, deeper along the path of echoes. Mist curled around them, rivers whispered beneath, shadows twisted softly, and silver light threaded faintly from above. Every step, every breath, every heartbeat became part of the rhythm of Xibalba, teaching the eternal lesson. True mastery flows not from dominance, but from alignment with the pulse of all things. And so, Ixbalanque and Hunahpu advanced, moving ever deeper into legend, their steps shaping the echoes, their breath guiding the shadows, and their rhythm carrying them further into the mysteries of the underworld. The corridor narrowed again, winding like the roots of an ancient tree, carrying the pulse of Xibalba deeper into shadow and silver mist. Ixbalanque moved carefully, each step a meditation, each breath attuned to the rhythm of the corridor, the river beneath, and the currents of the underworld itself. Hunahpu followed closely, sparks of fire weaving alongside shadow, each motion a counterpoint to the other, a harmony formed in stillness and motion alike. The second trial revealed itself gradually. Shadows emerged along the walls, coalescing into mirrors of the twins' own movements. But these reflections were distorted. One twin's fire stretched into jagged arcs, the other's shadow curved unnaturally. The echoes of their previous steps repeated faintly in the mist, overlapping with the present, layering past, present, and potential future into a single flowing rhythm. Ixbalanque inhaled deeply, feeling each layer resonate through the soles of his feet, through the pulse of his chest, and through the subtle vibrations of the river below. The twins stepped forward together. The illusions mirrored and distorted, testing perception and harmony. Ixbalanque did not hesitate. He allowed his calm to extend outward, folding the illusions into the rhythm rather than opposing them. Hunahpu moved beside him, fire dancing with shadow, motion balancing stillness. The shapes of reflection twisted, merged, and then shifted into flowing patterns, guiding rather than challenging, teaching rather than obstructing. The chamber widened, its ceiling high and etched with spirals of stone that shimmered faintly. Silver threads of light traced across the walls, coiling through mist, folding in on themselves. Ixbalanque knelt beside a faint pool in the center, letting the current of water run through his fingers. Within the ripples he saw echoes of countless paths, choices made, paths avoided, reflections of courage and understanding yet to unfold. He exhaled, allowing his calm to flow into the water, and the ripples straightened, aligning with his rhythm. Hunahpu followed, his spark of motion threading alongside shadow, the twins' harmony extending across the chamber. Time itself seemed suspended. Shadows flickered ahead of themselves, echoes overlapped, and reflections twisted infinitely through the mist. Ixbalanque moved deliberately, stepping in alignment with rhythm rather than resistance, observing rather than reacting hastily. Hunahpu's energy flowed with him, each spark complementing the shadow, reinforcing the balance, coalescing into a pulse that touched walls, floor, and river alike. At last the illusions softened, folding back into mist, leaving faint traces of silver light along the floor. The path forward became clear, guided by the currents of the river and the pulse of the chamber. Ixbalanque rose, sensing the underworld aligned with his own heartbeat, Hunahpu's fire woven into shadow, the rhythm of Xibalba harmonized with the twins' own. The second trial of reflection and echo had been met, not with force but with awareness, patience, and presence. The corridor continued, narrower now, winding deeper into the heart of the underworld. Mist swirled, shadows twisted, echoes whispered, and the river murmured beneath their feet. Every step, every breath, every heartbeat became part of the eternal rhythm of Xibalba. The twins advanced, their harmony guiding the currents of the chamber, carrying them further into legend, deeper into the eternal path of echoes, where trials and transformation awaited in silent, deliberate cadence. The corridor narrowed further, twisting like the veins of a living forest, carrying a pulse that seemed to emanate from the very heart of Xibalba. Mist hung thickly, swirling in slow, deliberate currents that mirrored the twins' every movement. Shadows stretched along the walls, folding into themselves, forming shapes that shimmered and shifted like liquid memory. Ixbalanque walked with care, each step measured, each breath aligned with the rhythm of the chamber, the river beneath, and the currents of the underworld. Hunahpu moved alongside him, sparks of fire weaving through the shadows, illuminating the subtle patterns etched into the walls, revealing hidden currents of light and movement. The twins' combined rhythm extended beyond themselves, a pulse that flowed through stone, mist, and river alike. The chamber responded, twisting, folding, and pulsing in harmony with their motion. The first layer of the trial emerged. Shadows coalesced into jaguars, serpents, and birds, creatures both real and imagined, moving in patterns that reflected the twins' own motion with subtle distortion. Ixbalanque inhaled slowly, aligning his heartbeat with the chamber's pulse, letting calm flow outward. The illusions twisted, testing perception, patience, and awareness, but not with force. Their purpose was guidance. The second layer revealed itself as echoes, faint at first, repeating the twins' steps, then layering multiple versions of their movements in overlapping patterns. The echoes were neither past nor present, but something in between, carrying lessons of rhythm, balance, and harmony. Ixbalanque exhaled into the chamber, letting the pulse of his presence merge with the echoes. Hunahpu mirrored him, sparks of motion weaving through shadow, their rhythm harmonizing the layers into a single coherent current. The third layer appeared as reflections, pools of water scattered through the chamber that captured not just image but essence. The twins' reflections moved differently, delayed, distorted, or multiplied infinitely. Ixbalanque knelt, letting his fingers graze the surface, feeling the pulse of each ripple, absorbing the hidden lesson, that mastery comes not from resisting distortion, but from aligning with it. Hunahpu followed, weaving fire into shadow, motion into stillness, reinforcing the balance. Time stretched and folded. Shadows flickered ahead of themselves, echoes overlapped endlessly, and reflections twisted through the mist in infinite loops. Ixbalanque moved deliberately, exhaling into the chamber, allowing every step and breath to harmonize with the layered currents. Hunahpu flowed alongside him, completing the pattern, their pulse extending into the walls, river, and mist. At last the chamber exhaled. Shadows softened, echoes faded, and reflections settled into stillness. The path forward became visible, guided by the intertwined rhythms of the twins and the currents of Xibalba. Ixbalanque rose, sensing harmony spread through the chamber, the river, the mist, and even the stones beneath their feet. The multi-layered trial had been met, not through force but through awareness, balance, and rhythm. The twins continued, stepping into the next corridor, deeper into the heart of the underworld. Mist curled around them, rivers murmured beneath, shadows twisted, and silver light filtered faintly from above. Every step, every breath, every heartbeat now carried the lesson of layered harmony, guiding them further along the path of echoes. Ixbalanque and Hunahpu advanced, moving ever deeper into legend, their pulse shaping the chambers of Xibalba, their presence weaving the rhythm of shadow, light, motion, and reflection. The corridor expanded into a chamber so vast that the mist seemed to hover in suspension, caught between shadow and silver light. Every step Ixbalanque took echoed faintly, not as sound but as vibration through the river beneath, the stone beneath his feet, and the currents of Xibalba itself. Hunahpu moved alongside, sparks of fire dancing through the mist, interweaving with shadow, creating a rhythm that filled the chamber entirely. The twins' movements merged, forming a pulse that extended beyond themselves into the very fabric of the underworld. The trials intensified. Layers of illusion, echo, and reflection overlapped in intricate patterns. Shadows twisted into shapes that mimicked their own form but multiplied infinitely, testing perception, focus, and harmony. Pools of water reflected distorted images that shifted with every step, every breath, challenging understanding and presence. Faint currents of light moved along the floor, winding through the mist like liquid memory, carrying hints of paths not yet walked. Ixbalanque inhaled slowly, letting the pulse of the chamber merge with his own heartbeat. The echoes of the twins' movements overlapped, creating a complex rhythm that required awareness, patience, and precise balance. Hunapu's fire flickered alongside shadow, their motion intertwined, reinforcing the pattern of harmony. The illusions bent in response, flowing rather than resisting, guiding the twins toward alignment rather than confrontation. At the center of the chamber, a faint silver river split into multiple streams, each carrying reflections, echoes, and shapes that twisted endlessly. Ixbalanque knelt beside the water, tracing its currents with his fingers. He felt the pulse of Xibalba within each ripple, a challenge to remain calm, to harmonize motion with reflection, and to let every distortion guide rather than confound. Hunapu followed, sparks weaving into shadow, completing the rhythm. Time itself became fluid. Shadows flickered ahead, echoes overlapped past and future, reflections multiplied endlessly. Ixbalanque exhaled fully, letting calm flow into the currents, absorbing the lessons embedded in every layer. Hunapu mirrored his movements, reinforcing the balance. The multi-layered currents of illusion, echo, and reflection aligned with the rhythm of the twins, forming a pulse that stretched across the chamber, river, and mist. At last, the chamber released its hold. Shadows softened, echoes quieted, reflections settled. The path forward opened, guided by the twins' harmonized rhythm and the currents of the underworld. Ixbalanque rose, feeling the alignment of Xibalba, the river, the mist, and the silver threads of Awilix above. The most intricate trials of the path of echoes had been met with presence, awareness, and unity. The twins moved forward together, stepping into the next corridor, deeper into the heart of Xibalba. Mist swirled, rivers whispered, shadows curved gently, and silver light threaded faintly from above. Every step, every breath, every heartbeat became part of the eternal rhythm of the underworld. Ixbalanque and Hunapu advanced, their harmony guiding the echoes, reflections, and currents, shaping the pulse of legend itself. And thus, the path of echoes continued, carrying the sons of night and destiny deeper into the eternal rhythm, closer to the transformations and trials that awaited at the core of Xibalba. The twins stepped into the heart of the underworld, where shadows deepened and silver light became rare, shimmering faintly like distant stars trapped within mist. Every breath carried the weight of ancient corridors, every step echoed through rivers of memory flowing beneath stone. Ixbalanque moved with measured calm, each heartbeat attuned to the pulse of Xibalba, every motion reflecting the harmony he had cultivated along the path of echoes. Hunapu followed, sparks of fire dancing through shadow, weaving energy into rhythm, shaping a balance that was both theirs and larger than themselves. The first chamber of trials awaited, vast and solemn, its walls carved with spirals that seemed to move subtly, breathing with the life of the underworld. Mist curled around the twins, carrying the faint hum of currents below and the whispers of echoes above. Every vibration, every reflection, every ripple of shadow carried a lesson, a test of perception, courage, patience, and harmony. This was Xibalba in its purest form, not a place to conquer but a rhythm to be understood. Ixbalanque inhaled, feeling the pulse of the river beneath the chamber floor, the sway of the mist, and the faint silver threads of Awalix's light filtering from above. He exhaled slowly, letting his calm extend outward, harmonizing with the currents, shaping the echoes and illusions around him. Hunahpu mirrored his movements, sparks of fire weaving into shadow, forming a pulse of presence that filled the chamber. The first trial manifested as a series of shifting chambers within the great hall, each one reflecting the twins' own motions but twisted with subtle distortions. Walls moved imperceptibly, corridors bent impossibly, and the river beneath twisted into streams that carried light and shadow in overlapping currents. Ixbalanque observed without haste, aligning each step, each breath, each heartbeat with the rhythm of the chamber. Hunahpu's fire moved in tandem, folding energy into shadow, motion into reflection. The illusions did not resist. They guided, teaching the twins to move in harmony with the currents rather than against them. Time became elastic. Shadows flickered, reflections multiplied, echoes overlapped past and future, and the river beneath carried fragments of memory. Ixbalanque stepped lightly, exhaling into the rhythm, letting each distortion flow into understanding. Hunahpu followed, reinforcing the pattern, their combined pulse shaping the chamber itself. The walls began to shimmer with faint silver light, revealing spirals of stone that twisted like currents of water. Each spiral seemed alive, moving in concert with the twins' rhythm, pulsing in sync with their heartbeat. Ixbalanque traced the patterns with his gaze, sensing the currents within each curve. The trial demanded presence, to move without haste, to harmonize with distortion, to reflect rather than react. At the center of the chamber, a faint pool reflected not the twins themselves, but fragments of their path, echoes of steps taken, shadows that lingered, ripples that had spread across the river and mist. Ixbalanque knelt, allowing the currents to flow through his fingers. Hunahpu mirrored his motions, fire and shadow blending into a single pulse. The first trial of Xibalba's core had begun, testing motion, reflection, and awareness simultaneously. The river murmured, mist curled, and shadows twisted in response to the twins' harmony. Every step, every breath, every heartbeat became part of the rhythm of the underworld, carrying the sons of night and destiny deeper into the trials that would shape legend. The chamber expanded, folding upon itself like the labyrinth of roots beneath the jungle floor. Mist hung thick, curling in slow spirals that reflected the twins' movements in layers of shadow and silver light. The river beneath them whispered faintly, carrying currents that twisted and folded back upon themselves, ripples of memory and intention moving in concert with the underworld. Ixbalanque inhaled deeply, letting his heartbeat align with the pulse of the chamber, feeling every vibration resonate through his body. Hunahpu followed closely, sparks of motion weaving into shadow, creating a counterpoint that balanced flame and stillness. The first trial of the multi-chamber sequence manifested as shifting illusions. Shadows coalesced into jaguars, serpents, and birds, all reflecting the twins' motions with subtle distortions. Each step forward, each breath, caused the forms to twist, elongate, or multiply. Ixbalanque exhaled slowly, letting calm flow outward, merging with the rhythm of the chamber. The illusions responded, moving in harmony rather than opposition, teaching rather than threatening. Hunahpu mirrored his motion, weaving fire into shadow, completing the pulse. Echoes layered upon illusions. Faint repetitions of the twin steps multiplied in overlapping patterns, creating a complex rhythm that could only be navigated with awareness and patience. Ixbalanque allowed each layer to flow through him, exhaling into the cadence, letting motion, reflection, and shadow merge seamlessly. Hunahpu moved alongside, sparks of energy weaving in arcs that complemented shadow, forming a single pulse of harmony. The chamber opened into a second hall, narrower, lined with mirrors of water. Pools reflected distorted images. Their own shadows stretched unnaturally, their movements delayed, fragmented, or multiplied infinitely. Ixbalanque knelt to touch the surface, feeling currents that carried memory and light. The rivers below rippled in synchrony, echoing the reflections. He exhaled into the rhythm, letting illusions fold into comprehension rather than chaos. Hunahpu followed, weaving flame with shadow, motion with stillness. Time stretched and folded, becoming fluid. Shadows flickered ahead of themselves, echoes overlapped endlessly, and reflections twisted infinitely through mist and water. Ixbalanque stepped deliberately, aligning every motion with the chamber's pulse. Hunahpu complemented his calm with fire, each spark reinforcing the balance. Together they created a living rhythm, a harmony that reached into the walls, mist, and river below. At last, the illusions softened, the echoes quieted, and the reflections settled into gentle patterns of silver light. The path forward became visible, guided by the twins' combined rhythm and the currents of Xibalba. Ixbalanque rose, sensing alignment between the river, the shadows, the mist, and Awalix's faint silver guidance above. Hunahpu mirrored his movements, fire folded into shadow, motion balanced with reflection. The first multi-chamber trial had been met, not with force but with awareness, harmony, and presence. The twins moved forward together, stepping deeper into the heart of Xibalba, where the next trials awaited, more complex, more subtle, demanding the unity of shadow, fire, motion, and stillness. The corridors twisted further, the river murmured beneath, the mist curled gently, and the echoes whispered faintly, all in recognition of the rhythm carried by the sons of night and destiny. Each step carried them closer to the transformation that awaited, deeper into legend, deeper into the eternal pulse of Xibalba. The corridor opened into a vast hall, where shadows deepened and the silver light from above fractured into countless streams. Mist hung thickly in the air, coiling like smoke around pillars of stone etched with spirals and glyphs older than the first river. The river beneath murmured louder here, carrying echoes of currents and whispers that had passed through countless trials, whispering their own lessons to the twins. Ixbalanque inhaled deeply, letting his heartbeat align with the pulse of the hall. Hunahpu moved alongside, sparks of fire weaving through shadow, forming a rhythm that filled the space entirely. The first guardians emerged from the mist. They were neither fully solid nor entirely spectral. Jaguar-shaped figures with eyes like faint embers, serpentine forms that twisted through the air as though swimming, birds of silver that glimmered like fragments of stars. They circled the twins, moving with deliberate precision, testing presence, courage, and awareness rather than strength. Ixbalanque paused, letting his pulse merge with the currents of the hall. He exhaled slowly, sending calm outward, and the guardians responded, altering their motion to flow in harmony rather than obstruct. Hunahpu mirrored the movement, fire and shadow weaving together, energy and stillness aligned. The twins became a single pulse, a rhythm that extended through stone, mist, and river alike. The guardians tested motion, reflection, and awareness simultaneously. Shadows flickered, echoes multiplied, and illusions danced across the mist. Ixbalanque moved deliberately, exhaling into the rhythm, allowing each distortion, each flicker, to flow through him and into understanding. Hunahpu followed, sparks threading through shadow, reinforcing the harmony. Together, their pulse shaped the guardians' movements, guiding them rather than confronting them. The hall responded in turn. Pillars shimmered faintly, coiling spirals pulsing with the rhythm of the twins. Rivers beneath the stone carried fragments of light, reflecting their movements in delicate patterns. Ixbalanque knelt briefly to touch the water, sensing the currents, the echoes, the guardian's subtle energies. Every ripple carried lessons of balance, patience, and presence. He exhaled fully, folding shadow and reflection into harmony. Hunahpu's fire danced alongside, completing the pattern. Time stretched, folded, and twisted. Shadows flickered ahead of themselves, echoes layered infinitely, and reflections moved across the pools like currents in a river. The guardians circled, observing, responding to rhythm rather than resisting. Ixbalanque and Hunahpu moved in perfect alignment, each step, each breath, each heartbeat reinforcing the balance of motion and stillness, of fire and shadow, of presence and reflection. At last, the guardians paused, recognizing the twins' harmony. The illusions softened, the echoes quieted, and the pools reflected only the calm pulse of the brothers. The path forward opened, a narrow corridor leading deeper into the underworld, where trials would grow more complex and subtle, testing the unity of shadow, fire, motion, and stillness even further. Ixbalanque rose, sensing alignment across the river, the mist, the guardians, and the chamber itself. Hunahpu mirrored him, fire folded into shadow, motion balanced with reflection. The twins moved forward together, deeper into the trials of Xibalba, carrying their pulse into legend, further into the eternal rhythm of the underworld. The corridor opened into a chamber wide and solemn, the air thick with mist and vibrating with unseen currents. Shadows twisted along the walls, coiling like living threads of memory, silver light filtering faintly from above. The river beneath murmured in gentle arcs, carrying ripples of past trials, echoes of footsteps, and currents of lessons long forgotten by the surface world. Ixbalanque inhaled deeply, letting his heartbeat synchronize with the pulse of the chamber. Hunahpu moved beside him, sparks of motion weaving through shadow, forming a rhythm that expanded into the entire space. The trial revealed itself gradually. Layers of illusions moved across the chamber. Jaguar shadows that twisted unnaturally, serpentine forms that glimmered and coiled through air, birds of silver that flickered like fragments of stars. Each layer echoed their movements, reflecting distortions, repetitions, and subtle delays. Ixbalanque exhaled slowly, letting calm flow outward into the chamber. The illusions responded, not with opposition, but with alignment, flowing with the twins' pulse. Echoes layered atop illusions. Steps repeated faintly in overlapping currents, shadows moved in intricate patterns, and light bent into fractals that shifted with every breath. Ixbalanque observed, aligning motion with reflection, anticipating currents rather than resisting them. Hunahpu followed, weaving sparks of fire into shadow, reinforcing the pulse. Together they created harmony within complexity, shaping the currents rather than being shaped by them. Pools of water reflected distorted versions of the twins, elongated limbs, multiple shadows, fragmented fire. Ixbalanque knelt beside one, tracing currents with his fingers. He felt the pulse of Xibalba within the ripples, sensing hidden lessons, subtle flows of energy, and the perfect timing of motion and stillness. Hunahpu mirrored his actions, folding motion into reflection, fire into shadow. The twin pulse extended, touching river, mist, shadow, and stone alike. Time became fluid. Shadows flickered ahead of themselves, echoes overlapped endlessly, and reflections multiplied infinitely. Every step, every breath, every heartbeat became a meditation, a lesson in harmony, a test of awareness. Ixbalanque allowed currents to flow through him, absorbing distortions into calm. Hunahpu's energy intertwined, balancing flame with shadow, motion with stillness. Together they moved as one pulse, one rhythm, guiding the chamber's layers into alignment. At last the illusions softened, echoes quieted, and reflections settled into gentle ripples of silver light. The path forward revealed itself, guided by the twins' combined rhythm and the pulse of Xibalba. Ixbalanque rose, feeling the alignment of river, mist, stone, and guardian echoes. Hunahpu mirrored him, fire folded into shadow, motion balanced with reflection. The twins continued, stepping deeper into the trials of Xibalba. Mist swirled, rivers murmured, shadows shifted softly, and silver light threaded faintly from above. Every step, every breath, every heartbeat became part of the eternal rhythm of the underworld. They advanced further, their presence shaping the currents of legend, carrying them toward trials that would test the unity of shadow, fire, motion, and stillness to their fullest measure. The corridor narrowed into a spiral, winding deep into shadow, mist, and the faint pulse of silver light. Ixbalanque moved deliberately, each step measured, each breath attuned to the rhythm of the chamber, the river beneath, and the currents of the underworld. Hunahpu followed closely, sparks of fire weaving alongside shadow, their combined pulse expanding to fill the corridor. The underworld itself seemed to watch, currents of air, mist, and river responding to their presence. The final sequence of trials began subtly. Shadows folded into themselves, twisting into forms both familiar and impossible. Jaguars elongated unnaturally, serpents coiled in impossible loops, birds shimmered like fragments of light that flickered faster than thought. Every movement the twins made was reflected, distorted, and echoed across the chamber. Ixbalanque inhaled slowly, aligning his heartbeat with the currents, exhaling into the pulse, allowing the illusions to flow around him rather than collide. Hunahpu mirrored him, weaving motion and flame into the pattern. Echoes layered upon illusions, repeating steps in overlapping currents, merging past, present, and potential future into a single rhythm. The twins moved in perfect harmony, folding reflection and shadow, motion and stillness, into a coherent pulse. The underworld's guardians watched, circling in subtle motion, testing not force but presence, awareness, and balance. Pools of water reflected distorted images. Their shadows multiplied, fire fragmented into infinite sparks, and the corridors themselves seemed to bend and twist endlessly. Ixbalanque knelt, tracing currents with his fingers. He felt the heartbeat of Xibalba through the ripples, sensing the hidden lessons and subtle flows of energy. Hunahpu followed, folding fire into shadow, motion into reflection. Together, the twins' pulse extended through mist, stone, river, and shadow alike. Time itself stretched and folded. Shadows flickered ahead of themselves, echoes layered infinitely, reflections multiplied endlessly. Every step, every breath, every heartbeat became both meditation and trial. Ixbalanque allowed the currents to flow through him, absorbing distortions into calm. Hunahpu's energy intertwined, balancing fire and shadow, motion and stillness. Their rhythm shaped the chamber, guiding the illusions, echoes and reflections into harmony. At last the final patterns settled. Mist softened, shadows aligned, echoes quieted, and pools reflected only the calm pulse of the twins. The path forward revealed itself, a narrow corridor leading directly toward the heart of Xibalba. Ixbalanque rose, sensing alignment across river, stone, mist and guardian's subtle currents. Hunahpu mirrored him, their combined rhythm now inseparable. The twins advanced together, stepping into the core of Xibalba. Mist swirled, rivers murmured beneath, shadows curved softly, and silver light threaded faintly from above. Every step, every breath, every heartbeat carried the lesson of unity, awareness and harmony, shaping the eternal rhythm of the underworld and advancing them deeper into legend. The chamber expanded, vast and shadowed, the ceiling lost in mist and faint silver light that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. Ixbalanque and Hunahpu stepped forward cautiously, their rhythm measured, each breath aligned with the pulse of the underworld. The river beneath them murmured louder, carrying currents that twisted and layered like thoughts of forgotten gods. Mist curled thickly around pillars of stone, carrying echoes of footsteps long past, the faint vibrations of guardians unseen, and the subtle hum of the eternal rhythm. From the shadows, the guardians of the chamber began to move. They were jaguar-like, serpentine and avian, all composed of shifting mist and silver light. Their motions were precise, not aggressive, testing presence, harmony and unity rather than strength. Ixbalanque inhaled deeply, sensing the pulse of each being, the rhythm of every shadow, every ripple, every echo. He exhaled into the chamber, allowing calm to flow outward, guiding the guardian's movements into harmony. Hunahpu mirrored him, weaving fire into shadow, motion into stillness, creating a pulse that resonated through the chamber. The deepest currents of the trial appeared next. Layers of illusion, echo, and reflection intertwined so tightly that the twins' perception alone would not suffice. Shadows repeated, twisted, and overlapped. Reflections multiplied infinitely in the pools. Echoes of past steps blended with projections of future motion. Ixbalanque knelt beside one pool, tracing the ripples with his fingers, feeling the heartbeat of Xibalba through every curve. Hunahpu followed, folding sparks of fire into shadow, threading motion into calm. Together they became a single rhythm, a unified pulse that could navigate the complexity without faltering. Time became fluid. Every motion, every breath, every heartbeat flowed into the pulse of the chamber. Shadows flickered ahead of themselves, echoes layered endlessly, reflections multiplied in infinite combinations. Ixbalanque allowed the currents to flow through him, absorbing distortion into harmony. Hunahpu's energy intertwined seamlessly, reinforcing balance, presence, and motion. The illusions and guardians responded, flowing with the twins rather than obstructing them. The river beneath them glimmered with fragments of memory, carrying the echoes of all prior trials. Ixbalanque felt the currents, the twists of illusion, the pulse of guardians, and folded them into calm, understanding that mastery is not conquest but alignment. Hunahpu mirrored his movements, fire complementing shadow, motion balancing stillness. Their unity created a pulse that extended through stone, river, mist, and shadow alike. At last the chamber exhaled. Shadows softened, echoes faded, reflections settled, and the guardians paused in acknowledgement. The path forward opened, leading to the very heart of Xibalba, where the most subtle and demanding trials awaited. Ixbalanque rose, sensing alignment across all currents, all guardians, all echoes. Hunahpu mirrored him, their rhythm now inseparable, a single pulse guiding them deeper into the eternal rhythm of the underworld. The twins advanced, mist swirling, rivers murmuring, shadows curving gently, silver light threading faintly from above. Every step, every breath, every heartbeat carried the lessons of unity, awareness, and harmony, propelling them into the deepest trials of Xibalba, toward the transformation that would define their legend. The chamber stretched endlessly, shadow and silver light mingling in a rhythm that seemed alive, pulsing in concert with the heartbeat of the underworld itself. Ixbalanque and Hunahpu stepped forward deliberately, each motion measured, each breath aligned with the pulse of the river beneath their feet and the currents of Xibalba flowing invisibly through the stone. Mist curled around pillars and walls, carrying echoes of footsteps past and present, and subtle vibrations of guardians unseen. Every movement was a meditation, every heartbeat a bridge between shadow and reflection, motion and stillness. The ultimate trial manifested in layers. Illusions folded within echoes, echoes intertwined with reflections, reflections layered upon guardians' subtle currents. Jaguars, serpents, and birds of silver flickered in and out of perception, moving not with aggression, but with precise intention, testing the twins' ability to harmonize rather than resist. Ixbalanque inhaled deeply, sensing each layer, each vibration, each pulse. He exhaled into the chamber, letting calm extend outward, aligning the currents. Hunahpu mirrored him, sparks of fire threading through shadow, energy interwoven into rhythm. The river beneath whispered louder now, carrying currents that twisted and layered infinitely. Ixbalanque knelt, tracing the water with his fingers, feeling the pulse of the entire chamber. Guardians, echoes, illusions, reflections, and the subtle pull of Xibalba itself. Hunahpu followed, weaving motion into stillness, fire into shadow, their unified rhythm creating a single pulse strong enough to navigate the intricate layers. Time stretched, bent, and overlapped. Shadows flickered ahead of themselves, echoes looped endlessly, reflections multiplied in infinite variations. Ixbalanque allowed the chamber's currents to flow through him, absorbing distortions into harmony. Hunahpu's energy intertwined seamlessly, reinforcing balance, presence, and motion. Together, the twins became a single rhythm, a living pattern that shaped the chamber rather than being shaped by it. The guardians, observing the unified pulse, shifted their movement to match it, flowing in perfect alignment with the twins. The illusions softened, echoes blended smoothly, reflections settled, and the chamber exhaled in acknowledgement. Every layer, every ripple, every shadow was absorbed into harmony. Ixbalanque rose, sensing alignment across all currents. River, mist, stone, guardians, echoes, and reflections. Hunahpu mirrored him, fire folded into shadow, motion balanced with stillness. Their unity had conquered the ultimate trial, not with force but with presence, awareness, and perfect rhythm. The path forward opened, a narrow corridor leading to the deepest heart of Xibalba, where transformation awaited. Mist swirled gently, the river murmured faintly, silver light threaded softly from above. Every step, every breath, every heartbeat carried the twins deeper into legend, shaping the eternal pulse of the underworld, preparing them for the trials yet to come and the destiny that awaited at the core of Xibalba. The corridor narrowed into a winding spiral, walls twisting with faint silver light and shadow, carrying a pulse that seemed to originate from the very heart of Xibalba. Ixbalanque stepped forward, every motion deliberate, every breath synchronized with the rhythm of the river beneath and the currents of the underworld flowing invisibly through the stone. Hunahpu followed closely, sparks of fire dancing along shadow, motion and stillness interwoven into a single pulse. The chamber ahead pulsed faintly, alive with whispers, echoes, and currents that demanded awareness, unity, and perfect harmony. The first layer of the final trial emerged subtly. Shadows gathered into forms, neither fully solid nor entirely spectral. Jaguars, serpents, birds of silver. Their movements reflected the twins' own motions, but distorted, multiplied, overlapping, a rhythm that required precise alignment to navigate. Ixbalanque inhaled slowly, letting his heartbeat merge with the chamber's pulse. He exhaled, sending calm outward, folding illusion, echo, and reflection into rhythm rather than opposing it. Hunahpu mirrored the movement, sparks of motion interweaving with shadow, their pulse expanding to fill the corridor. As they advanced, the river beneath rippled in patterns of silver light, tracing the twins' steps and multiplying them in delicate arcs. Pools along the walls reflected distorted fragments of their motion. Limbs elongated, shadows stretched, flames fragmented into sparks of infinite possibility. Ixbalanque knelt to touch a pool, sensing the pulse of Xibalba through every ripple. Hunahpu followed, fire threading into shadow, motion folding into stillness. Together, their unified rhythm shaped the currents rather than being shaped by them. Time bent and twisted in the chamber. Shadows flickered ahead of themselves, echoes overlapped endlessly, reflections multiplied infinitely. Ixbalanque allowed the currents to flow through him, absorbing distortion into harmony. Hunahpu's energy intertwined, reinforcing presence, awareness, and motion. The illusions, echoes, and guardians moved in alignment with their pulse, yielding to the twins' unity. At last, the corridors opened into a vast chamber at the heart of Xibalba. Mist swirled around pillars of silver and shadow. The river beneath glimmered like flowing light, carrying echoes of every trial past, every step taken, every lesson learned. Ixbalanque rose, sensing alignment across all currents: river, stone, mist, guardians, echoes, and reflections. Hunahpu mirrored him, fire folded into shadow, motion balanced with stillness. The final threshold awaited. Ahead, currents of the underworld swirled in patterns of impossible complexity. Every ripple, every echo, every shadow demanded harmony, presence, and awareness. The twins stepped forward together, their rhythm inseparable, carrying the pulse of Xibalba, guiding them deeper into legend, into the eternal heart of the underworld, and toward the transformation that would define their destiny. The chamber at the heart of Xibalba stretched into impossible shadow, silver light drifting through mist like fragments of stars. Every step Ixbalanque took resonated through the river beneath, through the walls, through the currents of the underworld itself. Hunahpu moved alongside, sparks of fire weaving through shadow, their pulse synchronized in perfect harmony. This was the culmination of all trials. Illusion, echo, reflection, motion, stillness, guardians, currents, every element converging into a single rhythm. From the depths of the chamber, the currents of Xibalba rose, flowing around the twins, intertwining with mist, shadow, and silver threads of light. The guardians circled, now moving in alignment rather than opposition. Illusions folded, echoes harmonized, reflections settled. Ixbalanque inhaled deeply, merging his heartbeat with the pulse of the chamber. He exhaled fully, letting calm extend outward, absorbing every current into unity. Hunahpu mirrored him, weaving flame into shadow, motion into stillness. Together they became one pulse. The river beneath shimmered, carrying memory, light, and shadow. Pools along the floor reflected not just their forms, but their combined presence, multiplied into infinite possibilities. Every ripple carried a lesson. Unity cannot be forced, harmony must be felt, and mastery arises from alignment rather than conquest. Ixbalanque allowed the currents to flow through him, becoming rhythm itself. Hunahpu's energy intertwined, completing the pattern, folding every fragment of motion and reflection into balance. Time stretched, bent, and collapsed into a single pulse. Shadows flickered in recognition, echoes sang in resonance, and the chamber itself seemed to breathe in harmony with the twins. In that moment, transformation occurred. The lessons of Xibalba, of illusion, echo, reflection, guardians, and currents flowed into the sons of night and destiny. Calm and motion, shadow and fire, stillness and rhythm merged into a single living pattern. The mist lifted slowly, revealing the heart of the chamber. Silver light traced arcs across the river, shadows rested in perfect alignment, echoes whispered softly in acknowledgement. Ixbalanque rose, fully aware of the unity he carried within. Hunahpu mirrored him, flame and shadow intertwined. The trials had ended, not with victory through force, but through harmony, awareness, and presence. The path forward opened, leading toward the river of memory that would carry them back to the surface world. Xibalba exhaled in recognition, currents, echoes, reflections, guardians, and chambers all acknowledging the mastery of the twins. Every step, every breath, every heartbeat now carried the rhythm of legend. And so, Ixbalanque and Hunahpu emerged from the heart of Xibalba, transformed, unified, and prepared. The underworld's trials had shaped them, the rivers and shadows had guided them, and the eternal rhythm of the cosmos flowed within them. Their legend was now fully woven into the pulse of the universe, a story of motion and stillness, shadow and fire, reflection and harmony. The mist of Xibalba receded, curling back into shadow, leaving the twins standing at the threshold of the underworld. Ixbalanque and Hunahpu stepped forward, their movements calm yet powerful, each breath carrying the rhythm of trials conquered, illusions embraced, echoes harmonized, and reflections understood. The rivers beneath whispered, the guardians bowed, and the currents of the underworld flowed in recognition. They were no longer merely sons of the forest, children of destiny. They were now the embodiment of rhythm itself, the living pulse of motion and stillness, fire and shadow, reflection and harmony. Above, silver light from Awalix filtered through the canopy of the world above, casting soft illumination on the brothers' path. The jungle exhaled in acknowledgement. Rivers rippled in soft cadence. Every leaf, every stone, every whisper of wind bore witness to the transformation. The trials of Xibalba were not simply survived. They were understood, integrated, and carried forth as a living legacy. Ixbalanque inhaled deeply, feeling the pulse of the world, the underworld, and the infinite currents that connected them all. Hunahpu mirrored the motion, sparks of fire weaving seamlessly into shadow, motion balanced with stillness. Together they stepped into the light of the world above, carrying the lessons, the rhythm, and the mastery of Xibalba within them. The legend of the sons of night and destiny would ripple across time. Whispers of courage without haste, strength without aggression, harmony within chaos. Every river, every shadow, every echo of the world would remember their passage. And as they walked into the forest, the rhythm of their journey continued, eternal, unbroken, and luminous. So now, as you drift into quiet, remember their lesson. Courage is not only action but awareness. Mastery is not only conquest but harmony, and even in shadow, in challenge, in trial, there is a rhythm waiting to be found, a pulse guiding every step forward. Let your breath align with the calm of the world. Let your heartbeat merge with the pulse of the unseen currents. And carry the legend of Ixbalanque and Hunahpu with you, into dreams, into stillness, and into the eternal rhythm that flows through all things. Sleep now gently, carried on the currents of story, shadow, and light. The trials have ended, the legends endure, and the pulse of the universe continues, calm, infinite, and unbroken.